I am coming at you from a different location. I am in my closet, my prayer room, and I thought we would do the Bible study in here. Hopefully, I can not be interrupted. And I felt like this was just where the Lord was leading me to have our Bible study tonight. So I am going to wait for a few ladies to join on. When y'all join, just hit a thumbs up or a heart or comment or anything. But tonight we are on day 59 of our beautiful year in the Bible, and we are doing the book says Joshua. We're not doing Joshua. I think it's a misprint. Annette called me this morning and said, "Hey, I think it's a misprint." And I was like, "I have no idea." But it looks like we did Judges last week from all the way to 16. So this week will be Judges 17 to 21. So we're on week 9. We're still talking about wrestling with faith and judgment. And so we are doing Judges 17 through 21. Thank you, Annette, for pointing that out. I had not got to my Bible reading yet, and she'd already messaged me, so she was up early this morning doing her Bible reading. And so tonight we are going to talk about the people's need for God's leadership. When it's possible, while it is possible that the repeated refrain, "There was no king in Israel," which is what we're going to talk about tonight, paints this book as an appeal for a monarchy. It is better to see it as a call to return to God as their king. Rather than lifting up the kings as an idol above the confusion of this period, the addition of "everyone did whatever seemed right" reduced the population to the moral and spiritual levels of Israel's kings in later years. In other words, rebellion against God is democratic. Is anybody on live yet? I don't see anybody on yet. That's okay. Oh, I got a heart. Who is that? Comment below. I got another heart. Y'all comment below. It's not showing me that anybody's on, so that's why I'm like, should I just wait until people start joining? But and then I can edit all that beginning stuff out at the end. But so we're going to be reading about Judges. I don't know if anybody listens to true crime or watches true crime videos. I don't. I hear people making fun of people that do it, but I've never done it. I don't like true crime or anything like that. But I felt like this morning when I was going to clean and I was listening to Judges, I felt like I was listening to an episode on true crime because of all the horrible things that happen in this book. They're horrific things that even today's standards, which I know a lot of things are being exposed, evil acts that are happening in this world, and maybe it's not far-fetched for them, but for us as Christians, it seems so far-fetched. And so we're going to go ahead and read. Let me turn to it. So this is Micah's priest. There was a man from the hill country of Ephraim named Micah. He said to his mother, "The 1,100 pieces of silver taken from you, and that I heard you place a curse on, here's the silver, I took it." Is this right? Yeah. Then his mother said, "My son, may you be blessed by the Lord." He returned the 1,100 pieces of silver to his mother, and his mother said, "I personally consecrate the silver to the Lord for my son's benefit, to make a carved image and a silver idol. I will give it back to you." So he returned the silver to his mother, and she took 5 pounds of silver and gave it to a silversmith. He made it into a carved image and silver idol, and it was in Micah's house. So I think that's all important. We're learning that this time frame, they are definitely in idol worship, and it was in Micah's house that this happened. And it said, this man, Micah, had a shrine, and he made an ephod and household idols, and installed one of his sons to be his priest. In those days, there was no king in Israel. And it says that a couple of times throughout the scriptures that we're going to read. And it's very important that we know there was no king in Israel. Hey, Annette. And so it said, in those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did whatever seemed right to them. Does that not sound like the world today? Everybody just does whatever. I'm going to move my chair. Everybody is just doing what seems right to them today, with no regard of the law or anything. There are people out there that's doing that. Not Christians, but there are definitely a lot of, there was a thing in here I was going to pull up. There are a lot of people that live by that law. If anybody is following the things happening in Hollywood with Diddy and all that, there's lots of things coming out. We see Epstein that is coming out of the people that were involved in that. And they say that there was child sacrifices, there was prostitution, there was all kinds of things. There was child slavery. I mean, all the things that we think we gasp at and we clutch our pearls at, but yeah, this was happening back in the day also. And so it says in verse 7, there was a young man, a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, who was staying within the clan of Judah. The man left the town of Bethlehem in Judah to stay wherever he could find a place. On his way, he came to Micah's home in the hill country of Ephraim. Where do you come from? Micah asked him. He answered, I am a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, and I'm going to stay wherever I can find a place. Micah replied, stay with me and be my father and priest, and I will give you 4 ounces of silver a year, along with your clothing and provisions. So the Levite went in and agreed to stay with the man, and the young man became like one of his sons. Micah consecrated the Levite, and the young man became his priest and lived in Micah's house. Then Micah said, now I know that the Lord will be good to me because a Levite has become my priest. And that's verse 17. So it says the section begins with Micah confessing to his mother that he had stolen from her 1,100 pieces of silver. Fear of the curse she had uttered against the thief drove Micah to return it. His mother responded in orthodox fashion, my son, may you be blessed by the Lord. By this, she sought to cancel out the earlier curse. Yet she then consecrated the same silver to the Lord to be made into a carved image. In addition, having vowed to dedicate all of the silver to the Lord, she only gave 5 pounds or 200 shekels of the silver to the silversmith for the idol. And I think that speaks for itself that if we can see that symbolism that happens today with people doing the same thing, they say, oh, I'm going to tithe, and they don't, or they only give, $5, $10. I mean, that's pretty much what the mother was doing here. She was saving her money for the idols, but she was consecrating some of it for the Lord. But regardless, it was the money that was stolen. And she said she was going to give it all to the Lord, and she only gave him like a little piece. And so verse 17, it says, sinners of personal devotion like Micah's shrine were outlawed in Deuteronomy 12. The ephod is reminiscent of the idol that Gideon constructed. The household items were often associated with divination and were portable objects throughout the East. Although their exact form is unknown, Micah also installed one of his sons to be his priest in opposition to the officially authorized Levitical priesthood. In those days, everyone did whatever seemed right to him, a lifestyle exemplified by Samson. The author may have been saying the lawlessness was because there was no king in Israel. And I would say if Jesus is not, if God is not the king of your heart, then you are doing exactly that. You are living to what you see right in your eyes. You're not living by the word of God. You're not living by his commands. You're not living by what the Bible tells us to do. You're doing the things that are right in your eyes. And so it says that the author did not name the young Levite until chapter 18. According to Deuteronomy, Levites who were residing in any of the clans of Israel were allowed to leave their homes and go to that place the Lord had chosen to join in his service there. The Levite, however, was seeking any place that he could find. His behavior is symptomatic of the general tendency in Israel at this time for each man to do whatever seemed right. So it wasn't even normal for the Levite to be, it wasn't what the Lord had commanded the Levites are supposed to do when the Levite was going around roaming from place to place, just trying to find a place that he could go to. So we are now going to go into chapter 18. It says Dan's invasion and idolatry. In those days, there was no king in Israel, and the Danite tribe was looking for territory to occupy. Up to that time, no territory had been captured by them among the tribes of Israel. So the Danites sent out 5 brave men from all their clans, from Zorah and Eshtal, to scout out the land and explore it. They told them, "Go and explore the land." They came to the hill country of Ephraim as far as the home of Micah and spent the night there. While they were near Micah's home, they recognized the accent of the young Levite. So they went over to him and asked, "What brought you here? What are you doing in this place? And what is keeping you here?" He told them, "This is what Micah has done for me. He has hired me, and I became his priest." Then they said to him, "Please inquire of God for us to determine if we will have a successful journey." So they're asking him to pray to the Lord. And the priest told them, go in peace. The Lord is watching over the journey you are going on." The 5 men left and came to Laish. They saw the people who were there were living securely in the same way as the Sidonians, quiet and unsuspecting. So they're just sitting around being happy with where they're at. There was nothing lacking in the land and no oppressive ruler. They were far from the Sidonians, having no alliance with anyone. When the men went back to their relatives at Zorah and Eshtal, their relatives asked them, What did you find out?" And they answered, "Come on, let's attack them, for we have seen the land, and they are very good." And it is very good. Why wait? Don't hesitate to go and invade and take possession of the land. When you get there, you will come to an unsuspecting people in a spacious land. For God has handed it over to you. It is a place where nothing on earth is lacking. 600 Danaanites departed from Zorah and Eshtal, armed with weapons of war. They went up and camped at another place in Judah. That is why the place is still called the Camp of Dan today. It is west. From there, they traveled to the hill country of Ephraim and arrived at Micah's house. The 5 men who had gone to scout out the land of Laish told their brothers, "Did you know that there are an ephod, household gods, and a carved image and a silver idol in these houses? Now think about what you should do." So they detoured there and went to the house of the young Levite at the home of Micah and greeted him. The 600 Dananite men were standing by the entrance of the city gate, armed with their weapons of war. Then the 5 men who had gone out to scout out the land went in and looked and took the carved image, the ephod, the household idols, and the silver idol. While the priest was standing by the entrance of the city gate with the 600 men armed with weapons of war. I'm going to take a break. Hey, Wanda. I like that pink high five. That's cute. Sorry, I had to give me a drink. It's hot in the closet. I didn't know it was going to be this hot. I guess I never spend this long in here. Talking and had a camera. And it says, so basically they have invaded this this home, and they've taken all of their idols. And it says, when they entered Micah's house and took the carved image, the ephod, the household idols, and the silver idol, the priest said to them, "What are you doing?" They told him, "Be quiet, keep your mouth shut, come with us, and be a father and a priest to us." So they're trying to even steal the Levite, right? It is better for you to be a priest for the house of one person, or for you to be a priest for a tribe and family in Israel. So the priest was pleased and took the ephod, household idols, and carved image and went with the people. Man, he was easily persuaded, wasn't he? It didn't take much at all for him to just be like, you know what? It is better for me to just rule over people or be a priest for a bunch of people than just one. After they were some distance from Micah's house, the men who were in the houses near it were mustered and caught up with the Danaanites. They called to the Danaanites who turned to face them and said to Micah, "What's the matter with you that you mustered the men?" He said, "You took the gods I had made and the priest and went away. What do I have left? How can you say to me, 'What's the matter with you?'" The Danaanites said to him, "Don't raise your voice against us, or angry men will attack you, and you and your family will lose your lives." The Danaanites went on their way, and Micah turned to go back home because he saw that they were stronger than he was. Is that not a funny interaction that they were just talking about? After they had taken the gods Micah had made the priests that belonged to him, they went to Laish to a quiet and unsuspecting people. They killed them with their swords and burned the city. There was no one to rescue them because it was so far from Sidon, and they had no alliance with anyone. It was in a valley that belonged to Beth Rehob. They rebuilt the city and lived in it. They named the city Dan, after the name of their ancestor Dan, who was born to Israel. The city was formerly Laish. The Danaanites set up the carved image for themselves. Jonathan, son of Gershom, son of Moses, and his sons were priests for the Danaanite tribe until then. So that's the name of the Levite that was living with Micah in his home. This is when we finally know what his name is. And it said, the Danaanites set up the carved image for themselves. Jonathan, son of Gershom, son of Moses, and his sons were priests for the Danaanite tribe until the time of the exile from the land. So they set up for themselves Micah's carved image, and he had made, and it was there as long as the house of God was in Shiloh. And so the notes that I have on this is that, started back here. That was a lot. During the same period of apostasy, a group of Danaanites were also on the move. Like the Levite in chapter 17, they were not content with the situation assigned to them by the Lord and were looking for something better. They had earlier captured the cities of Zorah and Eshtal on the border between the territory and that of Judah, but they had been unable to conquer the rest of the territory allotted to them. Instead of seeking the Lord's help in their struggle, they sent out spies in a reenactment of what happened back in Numbers, seeking a new land for themselves. So the commentator here is saying that basically what those men were doing was they was not happy with the land that the Lord had given them, that so they were taking it upon themselves to go and seek out something else. And we do that a lot of times, don't we, when we're not thankful and grateful for what the Lord has provided for us. So then we're going to go on to the idols set up by the Danaanites in verses 30 and 31 served as a rival for the true worship of God, which was conducted there where the ark was, in Shiloh. So the ark was in Shiloh, and that is where they served as a rival for the true worship that was supposed to happen. And now we're going to go on to chapter 19, an outrage in Benjamin, to say the least. let's see. The opening line of this chapter anticipates the story's direction. Like the Levite in the last story, this one was staying in the hill country of Ephraim, and he was connected to Bethlehem in Judah. This time, through marriage to a concubine, a lower status wife, the Levite is nameless and is almost every character in the story. As is almost every character in the story. This highlights the fact that this episode is not unique, but was characteristic of these lawless times. So this is not just an isolated incident. This was a common theme that happened throughout during this time. Put this here. Right. Outrage in Benjamin. In those days, when there was no king in Israel, a Levite staying in a remote part of the hill country of Ephraim acquired a woman from Bethlehem in Judah as his concubine. But she was unfaithful to him, and he left her for her father's house in Bethlehem in Judah. She was there for about 4 months. Then her husband got up and followed her to speak kindly to her and bring her back. So we all know that when men come and talk kindly to us, they're trying to bring us back, right? That is a perfect example of what needs to happen in a marriage. When the husband makes the wife mad and she storms off, he comes and talks kindly to bring her back. And that's exactly what men should do. And he had his servant with him and a pair of donkeys. So she brought him to her father's house, and when the girl's father saw him, he gladly welcomed him. His father-in-law, the girl's father, detained him, and he stayed with him for 3 days. They ate, drank, and spent the night there. On the 4th day, they got up early in the morning and prepared to go. But the girl's father said to his son-in-law, "Have something to eat and keep your strength, and when you go, and then you can go." So they sat down, and the two of them ate and drank together. Then the girl's father said to the man, "Please agree to stay overnight and enjoy yourself." The man got up to go, but his father-in-law persuaded him. So he stayed and spent the night there again. He got up early in the morning on the 5th day to leave, but the girl's father said to him, "Please keep up your strength." So they waited until late afternoon, and the two of them ate. The man got up to go with his concubine and his servant. When his father-in-law, the girl's father, said to him, "Look, night is coming. Please spend the night. See, the day is almost over. Spend the night here. Enjoy yourself. Then you can get up early for your journey and go home." But the man was unwilling to spend the night. He got up, departed, and arrived opposite Jebus, that is, Jerusalem. The man had his 2 saddled donkeys and his concubine with him. And I think, after reading this, I think that the father of the concubine, the reason he was trying to get them to stay and continue to stay was because I think he knew if they went to another town and had to stay the night, what was going to happen. So I think he was familiar with the town and the travel that they were going to go on. And I think he knew what was going to happen, because then we're going to get into what happened. And it says, "But the man was unwilling to spend the night. He got up, departed, and arrived opposite into Jerusalem. The man had his 2 saddled donkeys and his concubine with him. When they were near Jebus, and the day was almost gone, the servant said to his master, 'Please, why not let us stop at the Jebusite city and spend the night here?' But his master replied to him, 'We will not stop at a foreign city where there are no Israelites.'" So he's saying, we're not going to stop here because there's not any Israelites and we can't trust these people. I think that's pretty much what he was saying. He was trying to be smart about it. But he wasn't very smart, because let's see what happens. "Let's move on to Gibeah. Come on," he said. "Let's try to reach one of these places and spend the night in Gibeah or Ramah." So they continued on their journey, and and the sun set as they neared Gibeah in Benjamin. They stopped to go in and spend the night in Gibeah. The Levite went in and sat down in the city square, but no one took them into their home to spend the night. In the evening, an old man came out from his work in the field. He was from the hill country of Ephraim, but he was also residing in Gibeah, where the people were Benjamites. When he looked up and saw the traveler in the city square, the old man asked, "Where are you going and where do you come from?" He answered them, "We are traveling from Bethlehem in Judah to the remote hill country of Ephraim, where I am from. I went to Bethlehem in Judah, and now I'm going to the house of the Lord. No one has taken me in. No one has taken me into his home. Although there's straw and feed for the donkeys, I have bread and wine for me, my concubine, and the servant with us. There is nothing we lack." So he's saying there's nothing that we are lacking here. And so the old man said, "Welcome," said the old man. "I'll take care of everything you need. Only don't spend the night in the square." So he brought him to the house and fed the donkeys. Then they washed their feet and ate and drank. While they were enjoying themselves, all of a sudden, wicked men in the city surrounded the house and beat on the door. They said to the old man, who was the owner of the house, "Bring out the man who came to your house so we can have sex with him." Now, this already happened when we read about Sodom and Gomorrah. Y'all remember reading about Sodom and Gomorrah and what happened? This is pretty much what happened to the angels that were going there to Sodom and Gomorrah. The owner of the house went out and said to them, "Please don't do this evil, my brothers. After all, this man has come into my house. Don't commit this horrible outrage. Here, let me bring out my virgin daughter," which is the same thing that Lot did. He offered up his virgin daughter to the men who were trying to rape the people. And the man's concubine, it says, "Here, let me bring out my virgin daughter and the man's concubine now. Abuse them and do whatever you want to them, but don't commit this outrageous thing against this man." But the men would not listen to him. So the man seized his concubine and took her outside to them. They raped her and abused her all night until morning. At daybreak, they let her go. It's a horrible situation. Early that morning, the woman made her way back, and as it was getting light, she collapsed at the doorway of the man's house where her master was. When her master got up in the morning, opened the doors of the house, and went out to leave on this journey, there was the woman, his concubine, collapsed near the doorway of the house, with her hands on the threshold. "Get up," he told her. "Let's go." I mean, knowing that your concubine, who you went all this way to go and get and bring back, you're just gonna, knowing what she went through that night, and she's laying with her hands on the threshold, just laying there. You're gonna tell her, "Get up, let's go." But there was no response, so the man put her on his donkey and set out for home. When he entered his house, he picked up a knife, took hold of his concubine, cut her into 12 pieces, limb by limb, and then he sent her throughout the territory of Israel. We know there was 12 tribes, and that's why he sent a part of her to every tribe. Everyone who saw it said, "Nothing like this has ever happened or has been since the day the Israelites came out of the land of Egypt until now. Think it over, discuss it, and speak up." Oh my goodness. Let's see, what time is it? 8:30? Okay. So that ends chapter 19. And so it's talking about in verses 25 to 28 the similarities of the narrative of Sodom and Gomorrah. The perpetrators were not pagans, but Israelites. That was what I was not understanding when I was reading this the first time, that these were Israelites who were doing this horrific thing to the man that did this to the concubine. It was Israelites that did this. The people who had just come out of Egypt and into the promised land, There was no mention of the concubine's death in the story, which raises the question of whether she was dead when the Levite found her, even at the point when he cut her into 12 pieces. Her unresponsiveness to the command suggests she was dead. At the very least, the Levite's actions go against the normal respect shown to a dead body in Israel. Carving it up as if it was a carcass of an animal and sending the pieces to the 12 tribes of Israel as a call to arms. The similar passage in 1 Samuel, where Samuel cut up a pair of oxen into 12 parts and distributed them among the tribes, shows that this act included an implied curse. Those who failed to respond to the muster could expect to meet a similar fate. Everyone who saw the grisly message agreed that such an outrage demanded a response. So the reason he did that was he was trying to get all the tribes to come together so that they could, we'll see what happens. And they were going to wage war against Benjamin. All the Israelites from Dan to Beersheba and from the land of Gilead came out, and the community assembled as one body before the Lord of Mizpah. The leaders of the land and all the tribes of Israel presented themselves in the assembly of God's people, 400,000 armed foot soldiers. So whenever I started listening to this part of the Bible, it was making me think back in Joshua. Remember when Joshua was leading them to conquer the cities and overtake the cities? Well, y'all remember what happened when they did not go to the Lord and ask him if they should go and conquer the city? They just took it upon themselves and all the people died, right? So then they learned a huge lesson. We're not going to ever go and conquer the city without us going before the Lord and him telling us that we need to do something. Don't we do that so many times? I know I mentioned that in the video, I think, before, where we do the same thing. We don't ask the Lord if we should move, and we move, or we do something, or we sell something, or anything happens in our life, and we don't ask the Lord about if this is the move we need to make, and it always ends in disaster. That's what the Israelites learned back then. And so here they're implementing that same thought process. And we're going to get to see that here. So the Israelites asked, "Tell us, how did this evil act happen?" The Levite, the husband of the murdered woman, answered, "I went to Gibeah in Benjamin with my concubine to spend the night." He left out the fact that she went away from him and he had to go and convince her to come back. But he just says he went to Benjamin with his concubine to spend the night. Citizens of Gibeah came to attack me and surrounded the house at night. They intended to kill me, but they raped my concubine and she died. Then I took my concubine and cut her into pieces and sent her throughout Israel's territory. Because they have committed a wicked outrage in Israel. Look, all of you are Israelites. Give your judgment and verdict here and now. So he is saying we need to vindicate. We are taking this in our hands and we are going to vindicate. So again, see, they're not even seeking, the Levite's not even seeking the Lord, who his job is to seek the Lord. That's the Levite's job, is to seek the Lord. And he didn't even do that. He was trying to get vengeance for them murdering his concubine. And then he says in verse 8, "Then all the people stood united and said, 'None of us will go to his tent or return to his house. Now, this is what we will do to Gibeah. We will attack it. By lot, we will take 10 men out of every 100 from the tribes of Israel, and 100 out of every 1,000, and 1,000 out of every 10,000 to get provisions for the troops when they go to Gibeah in Benjamin to punish them for all the outrage they committed in Israel.' So all the men of Israel gathered united against the city. Then the tribes of Israel sent men throughout the tribe of Benjamin, saying, 'What is this evil act that happened among you? Hand over the wicked men in Gibeah so we can put them to death and eradicate evil from Israel, because that was the only evil thing that had happened, right? They're like, let's kill these people that did this evil act, and there won't be any evil in Gibeah anymore. So it's funny. But the Benjamites would not listen to their fellow Israelites. Instead, the Benjamites gathered together from their cities to Gibeah to go out and fight against the Israelites. On that day, the Benjamites mobilized 26,000 armed men from their cities, besides 700 fit young men rallied by the inhabitants of Gibeah. There were 700 fit young men who were left-handed. And I thought this was weird whenever we read it. It says, there were 700 fit young men who were left-handed among all of these troops. All could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. So they were pretty accurate, fit. They were like the best, probably the best of the best. The Israelites, apart from Benjamin, mobilized 400,000. So the Benjamites had 26,000 armed men, and then they had the 700 fit young men. Well, the Benjamites mobilized 400,000 armed men, everyone an experienced warrior. They set out, went to Bethel, and inquired of God. So the Israelites went out and they sought the Lord, which is what we think, hey, this is what I'm supposed to do. They learned their lesson back with Joshua. Now there's no leader, there's no king, and now we know we got to seek the Lord, right? And they inquired of God. The Israelites asked, who is to go first to fight for us against the Benjamites? And the Lord answered them, Judah will be the first. In the morning, the Israelites set out and camped near Gibeah. The men of Israel went out to fight against Benjamin and took their battle positions against Gibeah. The Benjamites came out of the Gibeah and slaughtered 22,000 men of Israel on the field that day. So the Israelites did not win. There was 22,000 of them killed that day. But the Israelites' troop rallied and again took their battle positions in the same place where they positioned themselves on the first day. They went up, wept. Then they went up, wept before the Lord until evening, and inquired of him, should we again attack our brothers, the Benjamites? So they're back at the Lord saying, okay, we did not make it. We were conquered in the city. And now we want to know, are we still supposed to go back and attack? And the Lord answered, fight against them. On the second day, the Israelites advanced against the Benjamites. The same day, the Benjamites came out from Gibeah to meet them and slaughtered an additional 18,000 Israelites on the field, and all were armed. The whole Israelite army went to Bethel, where they wept and sat before the Lord. They fasted. I bet they did fast after that many people died, and they're like, Lord, what have we done wrong? We sought you. You told us to go. Why are we losing? And it says the whole Israelite army went to Bethel, where they wept and sat before the Lord. They fasted that day until evening and offered burnt offerings and fellowship offerings to the Lord. Then the Israelites inquired of the Lord. In those days, the Ark of the Covenant of God was there. And Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, was serving before it. The Israelites asked, should we again fight against our brothers, the Benjamites, or should we stop? They're asking the Lord. The Lord answered, fight, because I will hand them over to you tomorrow. So Israel set up an ambush around Gibeah. On the third day, the Israelites fought against the Benjamites and took their battle positions against Gibeah as before. Then the Benjamites came out against the troops and were drawn away from the city. They began to attack the troops as before, killing about 30 men of Israel on the highways, one of which goes up to Bethel and the other to Gibeah through the open country. The Benjamites said, we are defeating them as before. So the Benjamites believe that they are winning. But the Israelites said, Let's flee and draw them away from the city to the highways. So all the men of Israel got up from their places and took their battle positions at Baal Tamar, while the Israelites in ambush charged out of their places west of Geba. Then 10,000 fit young men, 10,000 fit young men from all Israel made a frontal assault against Gibeah. And the battle was fierce, but the Benjamites did not know that disaster was about to strike them. The Lord defeated Benjamin in the presence of Israel. So it wasn't that the Israelites defeated Benjamin or Benjamites. It was that the Lord did it, which is, I think, something that we can all learn. That is a good lesson for us. The Lord defeated Benjamin in the presence of Israel, and on that day the Israelites slaughtered 25,100 men of Benjamin. All were armed. Then the Benjamites realized that they had been defeated. The men of Israel had retreated before Benjamin because they were confident in the ambush they had set up against Gibeah. So the men of Israel had retreated before Benjamin because they were confident in the ambush. They were so confident in the Lord and what the Lord had told them was going to happen that they went on into Benjamin. The men in ambush had rushed quickly against Gibeah. They advanced and put the whole city to the sword. The men of Israel had prepared signal. The men of Israel had a prearranged signal with the men in ambush. When they sent up a great cloud of smoke from the city, the men of Israel would return to the battle. When Benjamin had begun to strike them down, killing about 30 men of Israel, they said, "They've defeated before us just as they were in the first battle." So the people in the ambush, they were like, "Oh, we're going to lose again." But when the column of smoke began to go up from the city, I just feel like that's a whole sermon. When the column of smoke, when they thought they were defeated, the column of smoke came up. Their signal came up that they had already won. It says, "But when the column of smoke began to go up from the city, Benjamin looked behind them, and the whole city was going up in smoke. Then the men of Israel returned, and the men of Benjamin were terrified when they realized the disaster had struck them. They retreated before the men of Israel towards the wilderness, but the battle overtook them, and those who came out of the cities slaughtered those between them. They surrounded the Benjamites, pursued them, and easily overtook them near Gibeah towards the sea. There were 18,000 men who died from Benjamin. All were warriors. Then Benjamin turned and fled towards the wilderness, Ramon Rock. And Israel killed the 5,000 men on the highways. They overtook them at Gidom and struck 2,000 more dead. All the Benjamites who died that day were 25,000 armed men. All were warriors. But 600 men escaped into the wilderness to Ramon Rock and stayed there 4 months. The men of Israel turned back against the other Benjamites and killed them and their swords, the entire city, the animals, and everything that remained. They also burned all the cities that remained. They knew better than to take anything, right? Because the Lord had not told them to take anything. They knew better than to take anything. They learned that back in Joshua when we did that Bible study. So, notes that I was wanting to bring up. It says in verse 29, it says, "This time Israel's strategy was more complex, including a frontal assault combined with an ambush." Which, isn't that what the Israelites did back whenever God was helping them defeat? They were always using a frontal attack as well as an ambush. And so it talks about the defeated Benjamites fled and they were all killed. So we are going to go to the brides for Benjamin, which is chapter 21. And it's kind of crazy here too. A lot of craziness happens here. The men of Israel had sworn an oath at Mizpah. None of us will give his daughters to to a Benjamite in marriage. So the people went to Bethel and sat there before God until evening. They wept loudly and bitterly and cried out, "Why, Lord God of Israel, has it occurred that one tribe is missing in Israel today?" The next day, the people got up early, built an altar there, and offered burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. The Israelites asked, "Who of all the tribes of Israel didn't come to the Lord when there was an assembly?" For a great oath had been taken that anyone who had not come to the Lord at Mizpah would certainly be put to death. But the Israelites had compassion on their brothers, the Benjamites, and said, "Today a tribe has been cut off from Israel. Why? What should we do about wives for the survivors? We've sworn to the Lord not to give them any of our daughters as wives." They asked, "Which city among the tribes of Israel didn't come to the Lord at Mizpah?" It turned out that no one from Jabesh Gilead had come to the camp and the assembly. For when the roll was called, no men were there from the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead. The congregation sent 12,000 brave warriors there and commanded them, "Go and kill the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead." I mean, they are just taking all things in their hands. They're not even seeking the Lord on this. They're just taking all this vengeance and things in their own hands. It says, "Go and kill the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead with the sword, including women and dependents. This is what you should do. Completely destroy every male as well as every woman who has gone to bed with a man." They found among the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins who had not gone to bed with a man, and they brought them to the camp of Shiloh in the land of Canaan. The whole congregation sent a message of peace to the Benjamites who were at Ramon Rock. Benjamin returned at that time, and Israel gave the woman they have kept alive from Jabesh Gilead, but there were not enough for them. So there was not enough. There was more than 400, right? There was only 400 virgins from Jabesh Gilead. The people had compassion on Benjamin because the Lord had made this gap in the tribes of Israel. The elders of the congregation said, "What should we do about the wives for those who are left, since the women of Benjamin have been destroyed?" They said, "There must be heirs for the survivors of Benjamin, so that the tribe of Israel will not be wiped out." They're still trying to save this tribe, the tribe of Benjamin. "But we can't give them our daughters as wives, for the Israelites had sworn anyone who gives a wife to a Benjamite is cursed." Well, we all know that the Lord does the cursing, not our actions, right? And that's what they're doing here, is they're not seeking the Lord on it, and the curse is not coming from the Lord. They think that, they think that's what's going to happen. But it says, they also, verse 19, they also said, "Look, there's an annual festival to the Lord in Shiloh, which is north of Bethel, east of the highway that goes up from Bethel." And then they commanded the Benjamites, "Go and hide in the vineyards, watch, and when you see the young women of Shiloh come out to perform the dances, each of you leave the vineyard and catch a wife for yourself for the young women of Shiloh and go to the land of Benjamin. When their fathers or brothers come to us and protest, we will tell them, 'Show favor to them, since we did not get enough wives for each of them in the battle. You didn't actually give the women to them, so you are not guilty of breaking your oath.'" Is that not crazy? Is that all we do as Christians? Like we try to find a workaround. "Oh, I didn't actually do this, so you're not cursed," That's what they're saying here to them. They're saying, "Well, you didn't actually give them. They were stolen. They were stolen. You couldn't help it, right? So you're not going to be cursed." The Benjamites did this. The Benjamites did this and took the number of women they needed from the dancers they caught. They went back to their own inheritance, rebuilt their cities, and lived in them. At that time, each of the Israelites returned there from there to his own tribe and family. Each returned from there to his own inheritance. In those days, there was no king of Israel. Again, we get to hear there's no king of Israel. Everyone did whatever seemed right to them. And that is it. But I wanted to go back and make a few points. Let's see. So when 21 started, it says, before the battle, all the tribes had sworn an oath not to allow their daughters to marry a Benjamite. Since the Benjamite women were wiped out in execution of the Holy War, and only the 600 men of Benjamin, so there was only 400 virgins and there were 600 Benjamites left, men. It seemed that the tribe was destined for extinction. The seriousness with which Israel viewed their vow against giving their daughters to the Benjamites is in marked contrast with their failure to remain separate from the Canaanite tribes, as the Lord had demanded. Seeking a solution, the people went to Bethel. Again, they wept and offered burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, just as in 2026. However, this time, they relied on their own wisdom rather than the wisdom of the Lord. And that is what pretty much I was getting out of all of this, is that there was no God. They depended on their own wisdom, what was right in their own eyes. They did not seek the Lord and what the Lord told them to do. I mean, they ended up doing that, but still, it was crazy. I mean, how many people had to die before they finally, the Lord acted on what he said? So this ends the book of Judges, and this, I read some commentaries were talking about how the book of Judges is God's judgment on the people. And that's pretty much what was happening here, was there was no king. Everybody was doing what was right in their own eyes, and that was God's judgment on the people. I mean, we see how many people just died time after time again. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people just died for no reason. And I think this is the valuable lesson. I know we're still talking about wrestling with faith and judgment, but I think if we are seeking the Lord, and we don't have to wrestle with, if we are being faithful to the Lord, if we are trusting in him, then we don't have to worry about that judgment happening to us. So I don't know. That's what I got out of this week's or tonight's scripture. And so tomorrow we are supposed to read Psalms 24 and 26. Tomorrow is Friday? No, today's Friday. Tomorrow's Saturday. I will go live tomorrow night at 8. So, oh, no. Ladies, no. We have our ladies' night tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. I hope y'all are coming. I have a lot of special things lined up. We are going to do our sister-to-sister connection, or sister-to-sister fellowship, where we are going to get a secret sister for the year. So if you have not signed up, tomorrow night is your last chance to do it. You can come and sign up tomorrow night if you've not previously signed up. And we are going to draw names and get a secret sister for the year. And then at Christmas, we will reveal our secret sister. But I'll go over all that tomorrow. But we have some special speakers who's going to speak some things. We're going to do some worship, bring a side dish. We've got chicken fingers coming, and I just know we're going to have just a great time in the Lord and a great time with our sisters. And I look forward to seeing all of y'all tomorrow night. But I will not go live tomorrow night. I may go live tomorrow during the day. So I'll post on the ladies group what time I'm going to go live. It's just pretty much whatever time I have available that I don't have something else lined up. That's when I'm going to do it. So I hope y'all have a good night. I pray God blesses y'all tonight and with a great sleep. We have a lot of people still sick. I know there's a lot of people still out there with the Ronavirus. Is that right? Is that the Ronavirus? So y'all just be praying for our sisters who are dealing with this sickness. I know Carly has got Isaiah at the hospital. He was having some trouble breathing, so we're going to pray for them. Let's see. Who, Lois. Lois is sick with the rhinovirus also. And so we're going to pray for her too. So I'm going to pray us out. If y'all have anything y'all want me to pray for real quick, y'all can comment below. I only got 2 comments. Annette and Wanda, thank y'all for interacting with me. That helps me so much to know that I'm not just out there talking to nobody. I'm glad y'all are on here with me. But all right, so let's pray. Lord, I just thank you for the ladies at Redemption Church. God, you are so graceful and merciful, and you have blessed us abundantly with loving and caring women at our church who are seeking you, Lord, who are digging in their heels and are seeking you with everything that they've got. And I'm so thankful for their faithfulness to you, and I thank you for your faithfulness to us. And God, I just pray for the ladies who are sick, dealing with some kind of sickness, whether it's the coronavirus or COVID or the flu, pneumonia, whatever their sickness may be. Lord, I pray for you to heal them. Put your healing hands on them. I still pray for Brother Glenn as he is still recovering from his surgery. I pray for Debbie as she is still recovering from her surgery. I pray you just heal all the people that I mentioned tonight. And all the ones that are not mentioned tonight, Lord, that you know about, God, I just pray for your presence just to fill their home and fill their bodies with your healing mercies. And God, I thank you so much. We praise you. We worship you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Night, ladies.